I still remember the exact moment Alyssa's eyes lit up when I offered to help her get that job. We were having dinner at my place, this small but cozy apartment in downtown San Francisco that I'd worked so hard to afford on my engineering salary. She was picking at her pasta, frustrated after another dead-end interview. "What if you applied to Innovatech?" I suggested, trying to sound casual despite knowing how much my company valued their selective hiring process. "I could put in a good word for you with the product team." She stopped mid-bite and stared at me. "Are you serious, Brian? You'd do that for me?" The way she looked at me in that moment, like I was some kind of hero, I'd have moved mountains just to keep that expression on her face. To continue hearing this beautiful and special story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Write your name and the city you're watching from so I can include a special greeting for you in my next story. Alyssa and I had been dating for just over a year. We met at a tech meetup where I was giving a presentation on software architecture. She asked the most insightful questions during Q&A, and I found myself fumbling over my words like a teenager. Later, she told me she found my nerdy confidence endearing. That was Alyssa. She could make even your flaws feel like strengths. Over the next 2 weeks, I became Alyssa's personal career coach. I stayed up late, helping her refine her portfolio, conducted mock interviews until she could answer any question flawlessly, and strategically mentioned her qualifications to Dave, our product manager. I even called in a favor with HR to make sure her application didn't get lost in the shuffle. The day she got the call offering her the marketing specialist position, she jumped into my arms, legs wrapped around my waist, peppering my face with kisses. "You made this happen," she kept saying. "You changed my life." I remember thinking, this is what it feels like to truly matter to someone. I had no idea that in just 3 months I'd be nothing more than an inconvenient chapter in her story, one she was all too ready to close. Chapter 2, when the office became our home. The first few weeks of Alyssa working at Innovatech were everything I'd imagined. We'd commute together in the mornings, my hand resting on her knee as I drove us through the San Francisco morning fog. We'd steal glances across the open office floor, share lunch in the courtyard, and exchange private jokes in company-wide meetings through text messages under the table. "This is like playing house, but better," she said one evening, as we left the building together. "I get to see you in your element, all confident and respected. It's sexy." Innovatech wasn't just any tech company. We were a tight-knit team of about 70 people, occupying 3 floors of a renovated warehouse in Soma. The culture was the perfect blend of ambitious and laid-back ping-pong tournaments and craft beer on tap, but also intense problem-solving sessions that could stretch into the night. I was proud to introduce Alyssa to this world. I watched as she charmed everyone from the reception staff to the CEO with her quick wit and genuine interest in people. She had this way of making you feel like the most fascinating person she'd ever met. It was what had drawn me to her in the first place. It was during one of our Friday gatherings that I first noticed something shift. We were at our usual spot at Barley, the after-work crowd creating that perfect buzz of conversation and laughter. Alyssa was deep in conversation with Tyler from the marketing team, the new guy who'd joined just a month after her. There was something in the way she leaned toward him, the way her laugh seemed a touch more melodic, the way her eyes stayed on him a beat too long. It was subtle, something most people wouldn't notice. But I knew Alyssa. I knew the different shades of her attention. "You and Tyler seem to be hitting it off," I said casually on our Uber ride home, trying to keep my tone light. "He's interesting," she replied, scrolling through her phone. "He worked for some major brands in New York before moving here. Has some great insights on digital marketing." "That's cool," I said, ignoring the faint alarm bell ringing in the back of my mind. "Glad you're connecting with your team." She reached over and squeezed my hand, her eyes finally leaving her screen to meet mine. "Thanks to you, you have no idea how grateful I am, Brian." I accepted the reassurance, pushing away the nagging feeling that gratitude and love weren't the same thing. Chapter 3, the signs I chose to ignore. Looking back, the signs were all there, flashing as clearly as a warning light on a dashboard, but like most warning lights, I convinced myself they could wait, that whatever was wrong would somehow fix itself if I just kept driving forward. The first real sign came about 6 weeks after Alyssa started at Innovatech. We had planned a weekend getaway to Big Sur, a small cabin I'd booked months in advance, perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. It was supposed to be our chance to disconnect from work and reconnect with each other. 2 days before we were set to leave, Alyssa called me from her desk. I could see her across the office floor, phone to her ear, her free hand gesturing animatedly. "I'm so sorry, but I need to rain-check our trip," she said, her voice dropping to that apologetic tone I'd later come to recognize as her convenient regret voice. "Tyler's putting together this massive campaign pitch for Nomadic Brews, and he's asked me to help. It could be huge for the company if we land it. Can't someone else from marketing help?" I asked, trying to mask my disappointment. "This trip is non-refundable, Alyssa." I know, but Tyler specifically asked for me. He said my perspective is exactly what they need." There was an unmistakable pride in her voice. "This could be my chance to really prove myself, Brian. You understand, right?" I ended up going to Big Sur alone, sending her photos of sunsets she should have been seeing with me. Her responses grew increasingly delayed and brief as the weekend progressed. By Sunday, they had dwindled to single heart emojis. When I returned to the office on Monday, I found Alyssa and Tyler huddled over his computer, shoulders touching, laughing at something on the screen. They didn't notice me standing there for a full 30 seconds. When Alyssa finally looked up, there was a momentary flash of something, guilt, annoyance at the interruption, before she smiled and waved me over. Later that day, I overheard 2 interns from marketing talking in the break room. They quieted when they saw me, which only confirmed what I'd caught snippets of, something about Alyssa and Tyler being spotted at Barley on Saturday night, looking decidedly not like they were in the middle of a work session. One night, as we lay in bed, her tapping away at her phone while I pretended to read, I finally asked the question that had been burning inside me. "Is something going on between you and Tyler?" Her fingers paused over the screen. She didn't look up immediately, which told me everything I needed to know before she even opened her mouth. "What are you talking about?" Her tone was defensive, but not surprised, not confused. Defensive. "You spend more time with him than with me lately. You're always texting, even when we're together like this. The way you talk about him." She finally put her phone down and turned to me with a sigh. "He's my colleague, Brian. We work closely together. That's all." "Is it?" Her eyes hardened slightly. "Are you seriously getting jealous? After everything you did to help me get this job, I thought you'd be happy I'm forming good working relationships." And there it was, the subtle wielding of my own good deed as a shield. The implication that my current concerns somehow negated my past. "I am happy for you," I said quietly. "I just miss us." Her expression softened then, and she curled into my side, her head on my chest. "I'm just focused on making the most of this opportunity. You know how important this is to me." I held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, trying to ignore that it smelled different, a new perfume she hadn't worn around me before. "I know," I whispered into the darkness. "I know." Chapter 4. The day the truth wore no disguise. It was a Tuesday when my world finally collapsed. One of those perfect San Francisco spring days, where the fog burns off by mid-morning, and the city seems to shimmer with possibility. The kind of day that feels too beautiful for heartbreak. I was deep into debugging a particularly stubborn piece of code when my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Dude, you need to come to the parking garage now." Something in the urgency of his message made me leave my laptop mid-task. I found Jason pacing by the elevator banks, his face a mask of uncomfortable pity. "What's going on?" I asked, my stomach already clenching with premonition. "I think you should see for yourself," he said, nodding toward the far corner of the garage. "I'm sorry, man." I followed his gaze, and there they were, Alyssa and Tyler, wrapped in an embrace that left no room for misinterpretation. Her hands were in his hair, his were gripping her waist, pulling her closer as they kissed against his car. They weren't even trying to hide. The world narrowed to that single image, burning itself into my retinas like I'd stared at the sun too long. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Jason's hand on my shoulder felt distant, as if happening to someone else. "How long have you known?" I finally managed to ask, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "I just found out myself," Jason said. Came down to grab something from my car and he trailed off, gesturing helplessly toward the scene. I should have confronted them right then. Should have stormed over and demanded answers, created a scene worthy of the betrayal. But something in me, pride maybe, or shock, kept me rooted in place. I watched as they finally broke apart, as Alyssa laughed at something Tyler said, as they got into his car and drove away, together. At 6:17 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Alyssa working late with the team, don't wait up for dinner. The casual lie, the automated heart emoji, they broke something fundamental inside me. I grabbed my jacket and walked out of the office without a word to anyone. When I finally returned to my apartment after midnight, Alyssa was there, curled up on the couch, scrolling through Instagram as if it were any other night. Hey, she said casually, barely looking up. You're home late. So are you, I replied, my voice flat. How was the team work session? Something in my tone made her glance up, her eyes narrowing slightly as she registered my expression. Fine. Productive. Why? I saw you, Alyssa. Her face remained carefully blank. Saw me what? In the parking garage. With Tyler. I couldn't bring myself to say more specific words. I shouldn't have had to. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, quickly replaced by something harder, more calculated. She set her phone down slowly, as if buying time to formulate her response. Oh, she finally said. Just that, one syllable. Oh, that's all you have to say? My voice rose despite my efforts to contain it. I saw you kissing him, getting into his car, while you were texting me lies about working late. She didn't immediately deny it, didn't apologize. Instead, she sighed, like my distress was an inconvenience. She now had to manage. I was going to tell you, she said. Her voice, measured, controlled. Things with Tyler, they just happened, Brian. We connect on a different level. A different level, I repeated, the words tasting bitter. And when exactly were you planning to tell me? Before or after you sent me that text asking me not to wait up? She had the decency to look slightly embarrassed, but it passed quickly. I didn't want to hurt you. You've been so supportive, getting me this job. Don't. I cut her off, a surge of anger finally breaking through the shock. Don't you dare use what I did for you as some kind of excuse for this. I didn't help you get that job so you could use my workplace as your personal dating pool. Alyssa stood up then, crossing her arms defensively. That's not fair. What happened with Tyler is separate from what you did for me. I'm still grateful for that, Brian. I'll always be grateful. Grateful, I echoed, hollowly. But not in love anymore. She looked away then, confirmation in her silence. When she spoke again, her voice was softer but no less resolute. Tyler and I, it's the kind of connection I haven't felt in a long time. Since Mark, I found myself asking, the name of her ex slipping out before I could stop it. Something flickered across her face at the mention of his name, a complex emotion I couldn't quite decode. Mark had been the long-term boyfriend before me, the one she'd been with for nearly 2 years, the one she occasionally still mentioned with a certain wistfulness. That's different, she said quickly. Mark was complicated. And what am I asked, suddenly needing to know how she categorized the year we'd spent together, the love I thought we'd built. She looked at me then, really looked at me, with an expression that was almost kind, almost regretful, but undercut with a certainty that told me her mind was already made up. You're a good man, Brian, one of the best I've known. But Tyler and I were aligned in ways you and I never were. Professionally, personally, it feels right. And us? Did that ever feel right? Of course it did, she said. But too quickly, too smoothly. But people change, wants change. I laughed then, a short, harsh sound, devoid of humor. You haven't changed, Alyssa. You've just traded up, or at least, you think you have. Chapter 5. The Hollow Victory of Silence. For 3 days after Alyssa left, I moved through the world like a ghost. I went to work, wrote code, attended meetings, all on autopilot. I nodded at appropriate moments, said the right things, but inside I was hollow. The worst part was seeing them together at the office. They weren't flaunting it exactly, but they weren't hiding it either. Shared lunches in the courtyard, coffee runs together, the occasional touch that lingered too long, the inside jokes that made her laugh in that specific way I once thought was reserved for me. You should say something to her, Jason suggested during lunch, watching me push food around my plate. Let her know how messed up this is. What's the point? I asked. She made her choice. The point is standing up for yourself, man. You got her that job. For Christ's sake. The truth was, I wasn't staying silent out of nobility or acceptance. I was silent because I was plotting. Because underneath the shock and hurt, something cold and calculated was taking form. A plan that gave me the only thing I had left to hold on to. The promise of consequences. That evening, I sent a text to Mark. Hey, it's been a while. Any chance you're planning a trip to the West Coast soon? I could use some perspective from someone who's been in my shoes. His reply came faster than I expected. Actually, I'm heading to SF next week for a conference. Let's grab a drink. The synchronicity felt like validation. Like the universe was aligning to offer me a chance at, what, revenge? Justice? I wasn't sure yet, but for the first time since seeing Alyssa and Tyler in that garage, I felt something other than pain, something like purpose. That night, I went through our photos together, methodically saving them to a folder before deleting them from my phone. Not out of some healthy moving on instinct, but because I didn't want to accidentally see her face when Mark and I met up. Didn't want anything to soften my resolve. As I scrolled, I paused on an image from 6 months ago. Alyssa and I at Ocean Beach at sunset, her curled into my side against the wind, both of us laughing at something now forgotten. We looked happy. We had been happy. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I really going to do this? Use her ex, the one person she'd admitted still had an emotional hold on her, as a tool for revenge. Was I really that person? Then my phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. A photo of Alyssa and Tyler at some rooftop bar, his arm around her waist, her smile radiant in the golden hour light. Posted just minutes ago, barely a week after she'd left. She had moved on, completely, without a backward glance. I closed Instagram and continued deleting our past, my resolve hardening with each swipe. By the time I'd finished, all traces of Alyssa were gone from my digital life, but one photo remained, a screenshot I'd taken months ago, of her wistful expression, as she'd shown me an old picture of her and Mark. He was the only one I ever really loved. Her voice echoed in my memory. Chapter 6. When opportunity came knocking, the bar where I agreed to meet Mark was deliberately far from Innovate. A dimly lit place in Hayes Valley, with leather booths and bartenders who knew how to make a proper old-fashioned. Not the kind of spot where I might run into college. Not the kind of place where Alyssa would ever go. I arrived early, claiming a corner booth with a good view of the entrance. My stomach was in knots, a mixture of nervousness and something darker. Anticipation, perhaps, or the thrill of stepping so far outside my usual ethical boundary. Mark arrived exactly on time, a trait I remembered Alyssa mentioning she'd loved about him. He spotted me immediately, raising a hand in greeting, as he navigated through the after-work crowd. He looked much like the photos I'd seen, tall with the confident bearing of someone used to commanding attention, dark hair just starting to gray at the temples. Brian, he said, sliding into the booth across from me, extending his hand. Good to finally meet in person. His handshake was firm, his smile genuine. It struck me then that he had no idea why I'd really reached out. In his mind, this was just two guys connected by a mutual ex, having a friendly drink. Thanks for making time, I said, signaling the server. How's the conference going? Predictably dull. He laughed. But necessary. How about you? Your message seemed, I don't know, like maybe you needed to talk. I took a breath, steeling myself. This was the moment to either commit to my plan or back away. Alyssa left me, I said, the words still bitter on my tongue. For a guy at work, a guy she met because I helped her get the job. Mark's expression shifted from friendly to concerned. Damn. I'm sorry, man. That's rough. Yeah, I took a long sip of my drink. The thing is, it's not just that she left. It's how she did it, like I was just disposable. Mark nodded slowly. That sounds familiar. I figured it might, I said, watching him carefully. She mentioned you know, several times. A flash of something, hope, curiosity, crossed his face before he masked it. Did she? All terrible things, I assume. Actually, no. I swirled the ice in my glass. She said you were the only one she ever really loved. Mark went still, his drink halfway to his lips. She said that? The raw emotion in his voice confirmed what I'd suspected. He wasn't over her. Not completely. Wine-drunk confession, I explained. She showed me old photos of you two. Got nostalgic. He set his drink down, running a hand through his hair. That doesn't sound like Alyssa. She's usually pretty final about things. I think you're the exception, I said, the words carefully chosen to plant the seed, the one that got away, so to speak. Mark laughed, but it was hollow. Ironic, since she's the one who left. Why did you two break up? I asked, genuinely curious now. If you don't mind my asking, he sighed, settling back in the booth. Distance. Mainly. I had to move to Boston for the startup. We tried long distance for a while, but... He shrugged. She said she couldn't do it anymore. That relationship shouldn't be that hard. And you accepted that? I asked. Mark stared into his drink. Not at first. I flew out here 3 times in 2 months, trying to convince her we could make it work. Offered to move the company headquarters back to San Francisco. He laughed softly. I was pretty desperate. What changed? She started dating someone else. Some graphic designer. Made it clear I needed to stop calling. He took a long sip of his drink. So I did. The pieces were falling into place. Mark hadn't just been important to Alyssa. He'd been willing to upend his entire life for her, and she'd still walked away. That sounds like Alyssa, I said quietly. When she's done, she's done. Mark nodded, his expression distant. Yeah. Though sometimes I wonder if she ever really was done. We still text occasionally. Birthday wishes, that sort of thing. Always feels like there's something unresolved. This was my opening. The perfect segue into what I'd planned. But sitting across from Mark, seeing the genuine pain still etched in his features, I hesitated. Was I really going to manipulate this man's lingering feelings just to hurt Alyssa? Then I remembered her in the parking garage with Tyler. Remembered how quickly she'd moved on, how easily she'd discarded what we'd built. She's not with the graphic designer anymore. I heard myself saying. Before me, there were a couple others. None lasted more than a few months. Mark's eyes found mine. Questioning. Why are you telling me this? I took a deep breath. Because I think she's been comparing everyone to you, and we all fell short. He set his glass down, suddenly alert. Brian, what's really going on here? Why did you want to meet? The moment of truth had arrived. I could back down, claim I just needed to vent to someone who understood, or I could follow through with my plan. A plan that now felt both petty and profound. I wanted to meet, because I think you should know that she's not happy, I said, the lies coming more easily than I expected. This new guy, Tyler, it's a rebound. She's been talking about you more lately, checking your social media. Mark's expression was a complex mix of skepticism and hope. That doesn't sound like Alyssa. People change, I said, echoing her words from our breakup. Or maybe they just stop pretending to be something they're not. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the screenshot I'd saved. Alyssa looking at that old photo of her and Mark, her expression wistful, vulnerable. This was a few weeks ago. I lied, sliding the phone across the table. She didn't know I took it. Mark stared at the image. I could almost see the calculations happening behind his eyes, weighing probability against desire, rationality against the hope I was deliberately stoking. Why are you showing me this? He finally asked, his voice rough with emotion. If she left you for someone else, why would you? Because I think she made a mistake, I said, the words bitter on my tongue. Not with me, with you, and maybe it's time someone helped her realize that. Mark pushed my phone back toward me, his expression hardening slightly. So what, you want me to try to get her, break up her new relationship? How does that help you? I shook my head. This isn't about helping me. It's about, I paused, searching for the right words. It's about setting things right, about giving you both a second chance at what should have been. It was manipulation, pure and simple, but I could see it working. See the seed taking root behind his eyes. You should reach out to her, I suggested, making my voice casual. While you're in town, just for coffee, see where things stand. Mark finished his drink, signaling for another. I don't know. Last time I tried that, it didn't go so well. That was before she spent a year with me, I said. The self-deprecation genuine. Before she realized what she really wants. And what's that? Someone who challenges her. Someone whose approval she still craves. Someone who left a mark she can't erase. I met his eyes. Someone like you. Chapter 7. The shift in the atmosphere. The weekend passed in a blur of mundane tasks. Laundry, grocery shopping, a half-hearted attempt at cleaning the apartment that now felt too large, too empty. I avoided social media, knowing I might see updates from Alyssa and Tyler. Or worse, some hint about her meeting with Mark. By Monday morning, I still hadn't heard anything more from Mark. Part of me was relieved. Maybe he'd reconsidered, decided not to go through with it. Maybe my plan had fallen apart before it could do any real damage. But as I walked into the Innovatech office, I immediately sensed something had changed. The atmosphere was different, charged with an energy I couldn't immediately identify. Alyssa wasn't at her usual desk in the marketing corner. Neither was Tyler. Their absence felt conspicuous, drawing my attention like a missing tooth that the tongue can't help but probe. "Morning," Jason said, appearing at my side with 2 coffee cups, handing one to me. "Rough weekend?" "Not particularly," I replied, accepting the coffee. "Why?" He gave me a strange look. "Just checking in. You seem, I don't know, different today." "I'm fine," I assured him, the phrase now so practiced it felt automatic. "Any meetings I should know about?" "Just the usual stand-up at 10. He hesitated, then added, "Heard something interesting in the break room earlier." My pulse quickened. "Oh? Yeah, apparently Alyssa had drinks with some big-shot investor on Saturday night. Tyler's supposedly pretty pissed about it." I kept my expression neutral, taking a careful sip of coffee. "Is that right?" "Uh-huh." Someone from the marketing team said they came in early and overheard them arguing in the conference room. Jason leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Said the guy was her ex or something. The serious one before you." "Huh?" I managed, the single syllable revealing nothing of the complicated emotions swirling inside me. "Interesting. Thought you might want to know," Jason said, watching me carefully. "You okay with that?" I shrugged, aiming for casual indifference. "Why wouldn't I be? She can have drinks with whoever she wants." Around 11, Alyssa finally appeared, looking tired and distracted. She moved through the space with none of her usual confidence, avoiding eye contact with colleagues. Tyler was nowhere to be seen. Against my better judgment, I found myself walking toward the break room around noon, timing it so I'd cross paths with Alyssa as she headed for her usual lunch break. She was standing at the refrigerator staring blankly at its contents when I entered. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice neutral. She startled slightly, turning to face me. "Brian." "Hi." The awkwardness between us was palpable, but underneath it was something else, a vulnerability in her expression I hadn't seen before. "Everything okay?" I asked, the concern in my voice only half manufactured. She closed the refrigerator door, without taking anything out. "Fine. Just a lot going on." I nodded, reaching past her to grab a water bottle from the counter. "Work stuff?" "Among other things." She hesitated, then added, "I saw Mark this weekend." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't expected her to volunteer this information. "Mark? Your ex-Mark?" She nodded, studying my face as if looking for a reaction. "He's in town for a conference. Asked me to join him and some colleagues for drinks." "That's unexpected," I said carefully. "How was?" Something flickered across her face, confusion perhaps, or the struggle to articulate complex emotions. "Weird. Good weird, I think. He seems different." "Different how?" "More settled, confident." She pushed a strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous gesture I recognized from our early dating days. We talked for hours after his colleagues left, caught up on everything. "Everything?" I echoed, wondering if my name had come up, if Mark had somehow revealed my involvement. "Well, not everything," she amended quickly, "but a lot. He's doing really well. His company is taking off." I nodded, unsure what to say next. Part of me wanted to push, to ask if she'd mentioned Tyler, if seeing Mark had stirred up old feeling. But another part, the better part, perhaps, wanted to stop this whole charade before it went any further. "I'm glad it wasn't awkward," I finally said, opting for neutrality. "It wasn't. That's the strange part." She looked genuinely puzzled. It felt like no time had passed at all. Chapter 8. The Consequence of Calculated Moves. By Wednesday, the tension at Innovap was palpable. Alyssa and Tyler were barely speaking, conducting necessary work interactions with cold professionalism that drew curious glances from colleagues. The marketing team huddled in whispered conversations that abruptly ended when either of them approached. Office gossip, that unstoppable force, was clearly in full swing. I kept my distance, watching the fallout of my actions from behind the shield of my monitor. But the guilt was becoming harder to ignore, a constant companion that followed me from meeting to meeting, from desk to break room, from office to home. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark, meeting Alyssa for dinner tonight. Any advice? The casual tone of the message hit me like a physical blow. Mark trusted me, saw me as an ally, perhaps even a friend. Meanwhile, I'd been using him as an unwitting pawn in my revenge scheme. That afternoon, in a decision that still surprises me when I look back on it, I found myself walking to Tyler's desk. He looked up as I approached, his expression immediately guarded. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice low. "Got a minute?" "What for?" he asked, not bothering to hide his suspicion. I glanced around, making sure Alyssa wasn't nearby. I thought we should talk." Tyler leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "About what, exactly?" "About Alyssa," I said simply. "And Mark." His expression hardened, but there was a flash of genuine pain behind the defensiveness. "What about them? Did she tell you they dated for almost 2 years? That he was her most serious relationship before me?" "She mentioned they had history," Tyler said tightly. "What's your point?" I took a deep breath, already regretting this conversation, but unable to stop now that I'd started. "My point is, she's not over him. Never has been." Tyler's jaw clenched. "And you're telling me this out of the goodness of your heart? Please." "I'm telling you because—" I hesitated, unsure how to explain my motives when I barely understood them myself. "Because this whole situation is more complicated than you know." "No shit," Tyler scoffed. "My girlfriend's having dinner with her ex tonight. I'd say that's pretty complicated." So he knew about the dinner. He was clearly hurt by it, his anger barely masking deeper insecurities. "She told you about that?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "Unlike some people, Alyssa and I are honest with each other," Tyler said pointedly. The irony of his statement might have made me laugh if the situation weren't so messed up. Instead, I found myself saying, "Look, I'm not trying to cause problems. I just thought you should know what you're dealing with." "And what exactly am I dealing with, Brian?" Tyler's voice was low, dangerous. "Besides you trying to sabotage my relationship because you're bitter?" "I'm not," I began, then stopped myself. Wasn't that exactly what I was doing? Maybe not in this specific moment, but in the larger scheme. I just think he'd deserve to know that Mark isn't just some random ex. He's the one she compares everyone else to, the one she never really got over. Tyler studied me for a long moment, his expression calculating. "If that's true, then why did she leave him? Why did she date you? Why is she with me now?" Valid questions. All of them. Questions I'd asked myself during countless sleepless nights since Alyssa left. "Because she's looking for something," I said finally. "Something she thought I could give her. Then something she thought you could give her. But seeing Mark again, it's going to make her question everything." Tyler's eyes narrowed. "How do you know she's seeing Mark again? She only mentioned drinks over the weekend." I realized my mistake too late. I just assumed. "No," Tyler cut me off. "You knew. How did you know?" The direct question hung between us, demanding an answer I wasn't prepared to give. Before I could formulate a response, a voice behind me made us both freeze. "What's going on here?" Alyssa stood a few feet away, her expression a mixture of confusion and suspicion as she looked between us. "Brian was just sharing some interesting insights about you and Mark," Tyler said, his tone deceptively casual. "Things he shouldn't know unless someone told him. Like your dinner plans tonight." Alyssa's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed as she turned to me. "What are you talking about? How would Brian know about that?" The moment had arrived, the inevitable collision of truths and lies that I'd set in motion days ago. I could continue the deception, manufacture some explanation about overhearing her conversation, or office gossip, or I could finally come clean. "I know because Mark told me," I said quietly. "Mark?" Alyssa repeated, her voice sharp with disbelief. "How would you? You don't even know Mark." "Actually, I do," I admitted. "We've been in touch for a while. LinkedIn at first, then text messages." Alyssa took a step back, as if physically recoiling from this revelation. "Why would you be talking to my ex?" "That's a good question," Tyler interjected, his gaze intense. "Why would you be talking to her ex, Brian?" The truth hovered on the tip of my tongue, bitter but necessary. Because I arranged for you two to meet again, I said, looking directly at Alyssa. I reached out to Mark when he was in town, suggested he contact you. Her expression morphed from confusion to shock, then to something harder, colder. You did what I told him. You still had feelings for him, I continued, the confession gaining momentum now that I'd started, that you talked about him all the time, that you compared everyone else to him. Tyler made a sound, half laugh, half disbelief. Jesus, man, that's pathetic. But Alyssa wasn't laughing. Her face had gone pale, her eyes wide with a realization that seemed to hit her all at once. The photo, she whispered. You showed him that photo of me looking at old pictures, didn't you? I nodded, unable to deny. So this whole thing, Mark suddenly reaching out, wanting to reconnect, it was all some twisted revenge plot. Her voice was steady, but I could see her hands trembling slightly. Because I broke up with you. Because you left me for him, I said, gesturing toward Tyler. Because you used me to get the job, then traded up the first chance you got. Chapter 9. The Unexpected Revelation. I need you to explain, Alyssa said, her voice eerily calm, as we sat across from each other in the small conference room. For a moment, I considered more lies, more manipulation. But looking at her now, really looking at her, I felt the weight of what I'd done. The house of cards I'd built was collapsing, and all that remained was the truth. I was angry, I said simply. Hurt, humiliated. I wanted you to feel some fraction of what I felt. So you dragged Mark into this, used him. The disbelief in her voice was palpable. Do you have any idea how messed up that is? Probably about as messed up as cheating on your boyfriend with a coworker. I shot back, the bitterness still there beneath the remorse. She flinched slightly, but didn't look away. I handled things badly with you, Brian. I know that. But this, she gestured vaguely between us, this is something else entirely. Is it? I leaned forward. You know what's funny? Mark still loves you. That wasn't me making things up. That was real. The only lie was that you still loved him. Something shifted in her expression. A flash of vulnerability quickly masked. How would you know how I feel about Mark? Because I know you, Alyssa. I lived with you for a year. I saw your face when you talked about him. I paused, studying her. And I see your face now. She looked away then, and in that moment of averted eyes, I saw the truth, a truth I hadn't expected, hadn't planned for in my revenge fantasy. You do still have feelings for him, I said slowly, the realization dawning. That's why this worked so well, not because I'm some master manipulator, but because I accidentally tapped into something real. Stop it, she said, but there was no force behind the words. No wonder things moved so quickly with you and Tyler, I continued, the pieces falling into place. You were trying to outrun what you still felt for Mark, just like you probably did with me. That's not true, she insisted, but her voice wavered. Isn't it? You told me once he was the only one you ever really loved. Wine-drunk confession. Remember, I thought it was just nostalgia talking. But it wasn't, was it? Alyssa stood suddenly, pushing her chair back with enough force that it hit the wall. You don't get to psychoanalyze me, Brian. Not after what you did. I'm not psychoanalyzing you. I'm just finally seeing clearly. I remained seated, looking up at her. You know what the saddest part is? If Mark hadn't moved to Boston, if you two had stayed together, you probably never would have needed to use me to get this job. You wouldn't have met Tyler. None of this would have happened. Stop saying I used you, she snapped. That's not what happened. Then what did happen, Alyssa? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty straightforward. You needed something from me, I gave it to you. And the moment something better came along, you moved. She ran her hands through her hair, frustration evident in every line of her body. It wasn't like that. I cared about you. I still care about you. Just not enough, I said softly. Not in the way you wanted, she corrected. Not in the way you deserve. We stared at each other across the conference room, the air between us heavy with unspoken truths, regrets, might-have-beens. So what now? I finally asked. You going to dinner with Mark tonight? She hesitated, conflict written plainly across her features. I don't know. After learning all this, I don't know what's real anymore. That's the thing, Alyssa. Mark's feelings for you are real. That photo of you looking at his picture, real. The only fake part was me telling him you were still in love with him. I stood up, suddenly exhausted by all of it. But maybe that wasn't such a lie after all. She didn't deny it, didn't say anything for a long moment. Then softly, "Why are you telling me this now? Why not just let me walk into that dinner tonight?" None the wiser. It was a good question. One I'd been asking myself since I'd decided to talk to Tyler. To unravel my own plot. Because I'm better than what I did, I said finally. Or at least I want to be. Chapter 10. The Power of Unexpected Timing. 3 weeks of careful distance at the office. Of polite nods when our paths crossed. Of gradually decreasing awkwardness as new routines established themselves around the broken pieces of old ones. Alyssa and Tyler were still together, as far as I could tell, though something had changed between them. The easy intimacy, the casual touches, the shared inside jokes, all had faded into something more reserved, I'd heard through office gossip that Alyssa had canceled her dinner with Mark the night after our confrontation. Had sent him a message explaining that she needed time, space, clarity. That dinner would send the wrong message to everyone involved. I was slowly making peace with all of it. With what I'd done, with what had been done to me. Building a life that didn't revolve around hurt or revenge or the ghost of what Alyssa and I had shared. Then came the notification. It was a Friday evening. I was at home, halfway through a beer and a Netflix documentary, when my phone lit up with an Instagram alert. A habit made me check it, despite my better judgment. The post was from Mark, a sun-drenched photo of him at a vineyard in Napa Valley, golden hour light catching the edges of his smile. But it wasn't the backdrop or his expression that made my heart stop. It was the caption, "Some reunions have perfect timing." And there, tagged in the photo, but just out of frame, was Alyssa. I stared at the screen, emotions colliding like weather fronts. Shock, confusion, a strange sort of vindication. Then, unexpectedly, relief. Relief that whatever happened next wasn't my doing, wasn't my responsibility. My phone buzzed again. A direct message from Alyssa. "I think you should know that I'm with Mark this weekend. Not how you planned it, not because of your schemes, but because sometimes the universe has its own timeline." I read the message twice, then set my phone down, leaning back against the couch. The irony wasn't lost on me, that in trying to orchestrate a revenge that would hurt Alyssa, I might have inadvertently helped her find her way back to what she truly wanted, to who she truly wanted. Another buzz, another message. "For what it's worth, I am sorry for how I handled things with you. You deserve better." I picked up the phone, thumbs hovering over the keyboard. So many possible responses crowded my mind. Anger, sarcasm, bitterness, forgiveness. In the end, I settled on the simplest truth. Some reunions do have perfect timing. I hope you find what you're looking for. Then I set my phone aside, turned back to my documentary, and let go of the last threads of a story that was no longer mine to write.